Nobel Laureate, Bharat Ratna, Professor of Economics at Harvard, and now one of India's greatest living Indians, honored by NDTV and by the President of India. I'm joined by the original argumentative Indian, Professor Amartya Sen. Professor Sen, it's really an honor to talk to you today. What do all these awards mean to you and for the work that you've done? You're a man of outstanding accomplishment. What do they mean to you?
You mean
the honors, and there are so many to list, starting with the Nobel Prize, the Bharat Ratna,
I think,
now this.
Other than saying it's undeserved, but
you're very modest.
I don't know. I think if one concentrates on honors, that would be a terrible mistake. You know, I think I'm a great believer in a point which I think Adam Smith made with clarity, that our successes in life depend very much on circumstances that we do not create. So anyway, it's very nice when it happens. And the fact that I get a chance to chat with you and talk about important problems, well, that must be something.
Well, you're very, very modest. You're here at an interesting time in India, in what has been really a phenomenal week for our democracy, where we have seen the rise of a new party, the Aam Aadmi Party here in Delhi, which has cut across caste and class barriers and done so well. What do you think of the rise of AAP and the kind of politics that it represents?
Well, I welcome it very much, and I have to say that I was more skeptical of its likelihood than in fact it proved to be, and I'm always delighted when something I would welcome, but I don't think it's likely, does actually happen. And in this case, I have two reasons to be delighted. One, that it's happened, and second, that, I'm generally, I think, we Indians are often unduly pessimistic, and anything that demonstrates that there are grounds for optimism must be a good thing. So from both points of view, I'm delighted.
There's also the other debate that has emerged from these election results, which has been whether or not there is a Narendra Modi wave in this country. You've been yourself on record saying that you don't believe he would make a good prime minister, but you're a keen observer of Indian politics. Do you believe there is a Modi wave, or has it been more of an anti-Congress wave that he's riding on?
I would tend to think there is an anti-Congress wave, perhaps the sense that the party is somewhat exhausted. Perhaps the sense that I think Modi, one of the big things of Modi is that any firm leader has an advantage when the leadership problem in Congress remains so unresolved. I'm really very surprised, I have to say, and disappointed that the leadership issue, the elections are coming in a few months, that we still don't know who the leader of the party is. There is some understanding that it could be Rahul Gandhi.
Do you think they should formally declare Rahul Gandhi?
Well, they have to have a game strategy. Election isn't won by wishing to win the election. You have to have a strategy. I don't see what the Congress strategy is at this time in winning the election. So I think I would say it as an anti-Congress vote. I don't take the view that the Congress is completely sunk. I've been disappointed. My original loyalty had tended to be also to the left. In fact, my MP, and I emphasize that I am an Indian citizen and a participant in the electoral process, my MP used to be Somnath Chatterjee,
yes,
who was from the Communist Party. And I think the Communist Party has weakened a lot. Maybe they will come out better this time in Kerala, but it doesn't look as if it will come out better in West Bengal, which are the two pillars of strength. So in a situation when the left party is weakened, the Congress seemed weakened and somewhat confused. Actually, any kind of leadership that comes in a strong form, even if it looks intolerant and may even have some blood, as people suggest, in their hand from 2002 and so on, that is still supportive. Many people are ready to support it. But that's a kind of preferring something.
I'll interrupt you there, sir, because we in fact just had an interview with Mr. Narendra Modi, and he was asked this question about whether the 2002 riots stand in the way of Mr. Modi's ambitions now, and he said that, well, there have been riots before in India. 1984 happened, and that shouldn't necessarily stand in the way of his becoming prime minister. What would you say?
Well, there are three things to say on that. First of all, the fact that 1984 people have not been brought to judgment is an absolute shame. Let's have no doubt about that. But the people who are fighting elections today, whether it be Rahul Gandhi or Manmohan Singh or any other leader of the Congress party, of that matter, Sonia Gandhi, they were not the people responsible for that. No one accused them of that. Where Modi is standing he was the chief minister in 2002. He won a bigger vote in Gujarat, but a smaller vote in the rest of India after those events. That's not exactly comparable with that situation. If one of the perpetrators or one of the person accused, and I want not to say it's a country of rule of law, we shouldn't take anyone being accused to be guilty. So if one of those persons was standing in some kind of public scrutiny or legal scrutiny about whether he was a leader in bringing about that debacle and now wants to be prime minister of the country, well, that would naturally affect people's thinking. But that's not the case for the 1984 thing. It's complete shame that the 84 people, the criminals, have not been brought to justice.
But you wouldn't think it's a fair comparison. Professor
Yeah, but the third point, namely that in fact the 84 thing was something of which Congress leadership seemed quite ashamed. They were not large-hearted enough to actually pursue the wrongdoers. But it didn't fit into a Congress philosophy. There is no philosophy of killing off Sikhs or something like that. But quite a lot of the discussion, and even international papers discussing the treatment of Muslims within Gujarat, raises the question as to whether they are treated as a second-class citizen. That's a continuing problem. So I think in many respects that analogy is, Narendra Modi is a very close friend of mine, greatly admire him, but we don't have to agree on everything, and I don't think I agree with him on this.
Professor Sen, this has also been an extraordinary week in India because we've had a verdict from India's Supreme Court on which has criminalized homosexuality once again and has shocked and dismayed many in India. You, along with other eminent people like Vikram Seth and Shyam Benegal, had many years ago signed a letter saying that Section 377 should be struck down. Has this verdict hugely disappointed you?
Oh, to say disappointed me would be an understatement. It has appalled me. I didn't sign the joint letter. I never signed the joint letter, but I did write a separate letter supporting that cause and giving my own reason, pointing out that in 1861, when America was trying to get rid of slavery, India, under the British rule, was trying to create new potential slaves who could be threatened by the police for having having done something for which they could be arrested. Even if you don't arrest them, it always remains a threat. I think the Supreme Court judgment seemed to me, I was not trained as a lawyer, but I am a member of the law faculty in Harvard University, do give lectures in law, and I wouldn't pretend to know more law than the Supreme Court judges do, but you could still ask the question, was the reasoning right? I think the argument that was given saying, okay, well, if this section has to be struck down, has to be done by Parliament. I think it confounds two things in the role of the Supreme Court. This is an issue, first of all, of a minority right. That's the first of 2 points. And minority rights and human rights are protected not by looking for majority, but no matter what the majority want, you have to protect it. That was the main point of John Stuart Mill's On Liberty in the mid-19th century, about the same time published at the same time as India was passing this section. And I think to say that you have to wait for the blessing of the majority in the Parliament in order to protect the human rights and the rights of the minorities, and the Supreme Court wouldn't do anything to it, seems to me to be a failure of an understanding of the role of the Supreme Court. I say it with the greatest of respect. I have great respect for the Supreme Court. It has done a lot of terrific things in India and we admire that very
and
much.
ironically has not hesitated to, in a sense, encroach on Parliament's turf otherwise.
Oh, absolutely.
Except here.
And in fact, often instructed the Parliament to do certain things. So that's one thing. The second issue is not, I mean, I think the main issue is the minority right and human rights. But the second issue is that India is a country with, I have great pride in the country. We can do many things. We have done many things. But the division between some people who are privileged and others who are not privileged, the unprivileged, whether they are minority or a majority, often need support. And that's what the Supreme Court has often done. The vast majority of people who don't have good schools, who don't get a good meal, the Supreme Court has stepped in to say something.
Absolutely.
Even though they are not a minority, but they are of the majority of the population almost. The families affected are. And in this case, there is also an oppressed group, the people who are not like, who don't have, whose sexual preferences are not the same as that of the what is regarded as normal and what most people do. And I'm, also a heterosexual human being to the extent that any of these are discussable. It seems to me that these are private affairs. But I think so there was a failure to also look into the role of the Supreme Court in protecting the oppressed, no matter whether they're a majority or a minority. And Supreme Court's role has been so stellar before on that. I'm really disappointed. And then I come back to the minority point, to say that the majority, the Parliament has to cancel it. We won't do it. What kind of protection do the courts give to the rights of the individual? It's so important.
Well, Professor Sen, very strong words there, and I think words that many in India echo with you. Thank you so much for speaking to us today, sir, and congratulations once again.
Thank you for giving me the chance to chat with you.
Thank you, sir.